again, we're going to bounce in and out of our view on this about just how granular or the 30,000-foot version. Again, as we're starting to see some pictures that are now coming out of Israel about what the Iranian military response has been, this stuff looks a lot more physically devastating than what we've seen over the past few days. But again, as both of you know, about the bomb shelter, when Australians read about this, is basically they're one at the end of each street. Is there a basement underneath most buildings? So when we see something that looks like it's turned to matchsticks, fingers crossed most people got downstairs. What's it like there?
Yeah, so I mean, you were just there, Chris.
Well, that's why the casualty counts are so low. Say a building like this, we're in an office building here with an underground car park. What's happening in Israel now is you get at least 10 minutes warning with these missiles coming in from Iran. Because so they've got great interception and surveillance mechanisms. So people have 10 minutes, and they'll come down from the offices or flats above, and they'll go down into the car park. The car park is effectively becomes the bomb shelter, and everyone will hang in there as long as they need to. And then, sure, and when you see these devastating hits where buildings have been almost completely obliterated, very few casualties because everybody's in the basements underneath. Now, there have been deaths, there have been injuries, and we don't want any, but that's why they've been able to keep them so low.
And again, it just proves the point about why this action had to take place. Iran doesn't hesitate to hit civilian sites. So that's what they're targeting. I mean, Israel has been targeting the military and nuclear facilities in Tehran and right around Iran, whereas Iran hit the Soroka Hospital in Beersheba on Thursday. It's hitting residential buildings. It's only targeting residential areas. So if they had a nuclear weapon, can you imagine the damage they do? That's why it was an existential threat. And I think 86 people have been wounded, according to the Times of Israel. In the latest hits today, I think something went wrong. There was a failed interception. But I expect that the retaliation will hopefully get less and less now, although there are concerns about sleeper cells in the West and potential terror attacks as well.
I was going to say, so this brings us to, again, it's up to Iran what happens next, all right? Again, if we want to bring back those maps, team, that'd be great to see. Those little red dots about where all of the US military is. Again, the capacity, the ability for somebody to get from Iran to Kuwait, not exactly impossible, clearly closer than Israel, and state TV, which I know they can distance themselves to somehow pretend is different than the regime. Of course, it's PR for the regime, just like the CCP in China. They're openly now saying that all military, any civilian, is all now fair game. You can see there the differences about what types of missiles. So even if they're starting to run out of the stuff that's going to make it to Israel, clearly the stuff that wouldn't make it to Israel, they may well have plenty of, goes to Kuwait. If a hair on the head of a single further American is in any way attacked by Iran, then we are off to something very different from here. So again, no one knows, but you're reading of things, guys, about how Iran responds.
Well, we saw just a couple of days ago the Ayatollah Ali Khamenei said he does not intend to negotiate. There's going to be no surrender. He doesn't intend to negotiate. So I can't imagine why his position would change drastically from that. They've been utterly humiliated. Their nuclear sites destroyed. He's gripping onto power. I think that what happens now is most likely there might be an internal power struggle. There could be someone else within the IRGC who challenges him for power. The concern is, we all want to be rid of this radical Islamist extremist regime that's been terrorizing the world, committing terror attacks on Israel. But the concern is, well, what would come next? Would that variation be worse? Would it be more repressive for the Iranian people? Would it be more dangerous? We don't know. I mean, to completely have an Iranian uprising and become a democracy, that's the ideal dream scenario. But how you get that seems unlikely immediately.
When you look at that map, Paul, and you see what Iran has been able to do in Israel with its missiles, you know it could still do damage to American or other interests in the region. 100%. Now, the 2 points on that, though. One that's comforting, and that is it would be madness, right? It would be literally madness for them to broaden the war out, especially to bring in American retaliation like that, because they would be obliterated. They have no hope. They're seriously depleted now, thanks to weeks of attacks from Israel. It would be madness on their part apart. So that's the comforting thought. But the second point is the worrying thing, and that is they are not rational actors. The Iranian government is a theocratic regime, a theocratic dictatorship. It is sure there are many, many educated and sophisticated operatives in Iran. It's a very sophisticated country. But the people who call the shots, the Ayatollah and his other mullahs, these are religious fanatics who believe that they have a God-given mission to destroy Israel and death to America and everyone else as well. I've been to Tehran. I've met with these people. It's frightening to see their take on the world. So that is the trouble. You can't think this through rationally because you're not dealing with rational actors.
It's also interesting how increasingly isolated Iran is. I mean, we barely heard a word of objection. I mean, the most basic word of objection, really, from China and Russia, that they didn't step in any serious way. So Iran is completely isolated here. It has no friends. It has no power base. No one else arguing its case. In fact, everyone
he's turning up in Moscow tomorrow, the foreign minister. He's going to meet Putin and he's going to ask Putin for help. But I think Putin says, hey, mate, I've got plenty on my plate. I can't do much for you. We will see. That will be critical, right?
Well, interestingly, remember, of course, before all of this and the back and forth of a couple of days, that Donald Trump was saying that at some point Vladimir Putin, in a phone call with them, was saying, look, I'll help negotiate, of course, which the president's response was, yeah, okay, pal, you're involved with your stuff right now. That said, there are some nation states that have come out very strongly against it, places like Saudi Arabia, but of course, are they about to turn on the United States? Well, no, the president was just there.
Let me jump in there, mate. Let me jump in there.
Please.
Let me tell you something.
Please.
Saudi Arabia will be absolutely grateful to America and Israel for doing this. Saudi Arabia is worried about Iran as Israel has been almost over the last couple of decades. So they have to say that. As a Muslim nation, they have to condemn this action. But I'm telling you, behind the scenes, the Saudis are applauding America and Israel and saying, go for it.
So again, right, so sorry, you're going to get the glasses, it's breaking news. The Foreign Ministry condemned and denounced the violation of Iran's sovereignty and said it followed with deep concern and every effort should be made to de-escalate. So they've taken the Wong position. And we'll get to that in a second. The Iranian Foreign Minister, now again, so let's imagine good, normal Iranian people. They've got state TV screaming at them from one thing. Then there's, of course, the people that are outside that get to see the messages that are being said by that Iranian foreign minister who's currently not in the country. He's in Turkey, where he's in Istanbul. He made some comments there this evening. And the talking point that seems to have moved from what he has said, where he hasn't used the word war, he's talked about aggression and cruelty, but not the W word. In fact, this is him saying that, and then I'll add to it in a moment what the talking point is.
The warmongering and lawless administration in Washington is solely and fully responsible for the dangerous consequences and far-reaching implications of its act of aggression.
But the talking point that's starting to run through here is that people who are involved in the Iranian nuclear program are trying to, through a whole bunch of friendly media and international media, start to say things like, well, who cares that you hit the mountain? We already moved a whole bunch of stuff out. Here's some satellite photos of 12 days ago and a whole bunch of trucks. Even the International Atomic Energy Association, the main people who monitor or would inspect things like nuclear weapons, the response to them, Iran has been, well, you know, you may know about that one, but there's a whole bunch you don't know about here. Now, again, you could see that a crumbling regime trying to save face could be just smearing garbage everywhere. Why wouldn't it? However, the reality was that there were 3 places that were hit. And again, all day we've heard so many different stats and numbers that are starting to sort of blend together. But these are not the only 3 places that has some relevance to the nuclear capacity of Iran. So what do you say about that talking point that they are trying to push out to the rest of the world?
Israel had already done some 75% of the job in terms of destroying Iran's nuclear sites and many military sites as well. I mean, they've destroyed about 50% of their ballistic missile launches. Now, the sites that the US hit today, Fordo, of course, Estefan and Natanz. Now, Estefan and Natanz, they didn't even need the B-2 bombers, is my understanding. That was done with Tomahawks. And it was just finishing off the job. Israel had already done about 75% of that. The US went in to finish off the job. Now, Fordo is obviously the fuel enrichment facility that we've been talking about, the whole world has been talking about for the past week. That's south of Tehran, underneath Mount Alvand. Now, that was the one that was 80 to 90 metres underground, and that was the one that required the specialist technology, the B-2 bombers carrying the bunker-busting bombs that the US did use, 16,000 kilograms each for those bombs. Now, Israel has the best intelligence in the world. Mossad has shown that with the pager operation, has shown that with the Tehran strike, has shown that time and time again over the past 20 months. If they come out, if we are told that those sites have been annihilated, I would trust Mossad 100%. And this is part of the game of deception we've been seeing. Do you remember the media reports 2 weeks ago that Trump had asked Netanyahu not to take any military action in Iran to avoid death and destruction? That was false. That was part of the deception so that the nuclear scientists and the military chiefs didn't go into hiding in their bunkers. They were there sleeping happily in their beds when Israel came and took them out in the middle of the night. So deception has been a big part of this game. Israel knows where they are. They know where the sites are. And we have to trust the President of the United States and not some nutters on the internet when he says they've been obliterated.